think we are live now, right? So, hello everybody. Welcome to this webinar for the Balkan Energy Summit. And I'm Kostas Karalis, and I'm working at Hive Hellas. It's a subsidiary of Hive Energy, a company which is dealing with renewable energy sources. And in Greece, we have a portfolio of solar, storage, and hydrogen. And but I would like to pass on Dirk. Dirk, can you start the conversation?
Yes, and I hope you can all hear me. I'm very pleased to join this webinar focusing on the energy sector, the energy markets, the energy transition in the Western Balkans. I'd be very pleased to participate. And you just need to let me know, Kostas, in which format you would like to handle that, and I'm all yours.
Okay, I think so. Let's start with what are the key elements for the energy transition in the Balkans. Shall you start or?
Definitely, yeah, that's an interesting question. Because the energy transition in the Balkans is, on the one hand, something that the Balkan countries, I'm talking here about the six Western Balkan contracting parties of the energy community, as we call them, have committed to in various documents. Of course, we have declarations being made, such as the Sofia Declaration, in which the Balkan countries committed to decarbonize by 2050. We have more recently also a declaration being made in the context of the Berlin process, in the Berlin summit on 3rd November, in which the Balkan countries not only reconfirmed that commitment, but also outlined quite concrete steps and measures on how this transition is being implemented and is being driven. And last, and I would maybe a bit not modestly say not least, is the Energy Community Treaty itself. The Energy Community is an organization which has started out in providing the framework for energy sector reform, but it follows and has been following always very closely the European policy. So energy transition is not only part of the energy community's acquis communautaire, so the legal framework, but it is also subject to specific commitments that the entire energy community has made. We have adopted last year in our ministerial council a decarbonization roadmap, which is currently being worked on. That decarbonization roadmap includes several elements. For instance, the adoption of decarbonization targets, renewables targets, energy efficiency targets by 2030 by each and every individual country. It also includes the adoption and implementation of the clean energy package of the European Union, which will be soon modified through Fit for 55, and envisages as part of this package, there is a key planning instrument also envisaged, that's the National Energy and Climate Plans. And last not least, the contracting parties of the energy community will start working also towards establishing a regional carbon price, ultimately an emissions trading scheme for the energy community to be joined with the European Union. So that's just to set the framework of how in cooperation, in regional cooperation, in pan-European cooperation, the Balkans have committed to the energy transition?
Well, considering that the existing power generation portfolios are mainly coal-fired power plants, I think it's necessary to reach a consensus on the Balkan for the phase out of the coal-fired plants. For example, especially in Greece, we had the target for 2014, for 2024, which is now being revised for by 2028. All the coal-fired plants will be phased out. I think in order to enhance the pace towards a cleaner future in the Balkans, we need to have a kind of consensus in the Balkan regions for a more generous targets.
That is indeed one of the key challenges of any energy transition. It has proved to be a key challenge for EU member states. You just recalled us the example of Greece, which had very ambitious targets in that respect. It's important for the Western Balkan countries because of their traditional reliance on two main sources of power. One is hydro, but the other one is coal. In some contracting parties, such as Kosovo, for instance, the dependence on coal is way above 80-90% in the power generation mix. So it's clear that this is a challenge which is definitely not an easy one. And if you take into account the socio-economic circumstances in these countries, which are not members of the EU, so they don't benefit necessarily from the same kind of external support as well, the challenge is increased. Besides, we also have the energy crisis, which has hit the Balkan countries as much, and it may be even more, as the European Union. So, Kostas, you refer to certain changes also in Greece now. It's again clear that for the sake of affordability and for the sake, in some cases, of security of supply, phasing out coal now is an enormous challenge. And on the other hand, we have, of course, the fact that most coal generation power plants in the Western Balkans are coming very close to the end of their lifetime. So replacement is not only a matter of political determination, and by consequence phasing out coal. It is also a technical requirement, because these power plants can just not run much longer anymore. And on top of these technical and economical circumstances, we also have legal considerations. Again, the energy community includes environmental regulations, under which the countries have complied to reduce the pollution from these power plants, which in many cases, as rehabilitation would be very expensive, and given the age of the power plants, not always economically very sensible, amounts also to shutting down these power plants. So I think the whether there are clearly communicated and adopted targets on national level or not, definitely these targets would be helpful, and commitments as well. Some of the countries in the region have actually committed already, others have not yet, but it will just be a result of different factors and different partly technical, partly economical, partly legal conditions coming together. So the real question is, I believe, what will come after coal? and how to make sure that we manage this transition also very swiftly and smoothly, because evidently there cannot be a period in which there is not enough or not affordable energy to be provided to the Western Balkan countries.
So this is where we go now to the next challenge, because integrating the variable resources in the energy mix, this will be a huge challenge for the Balkans. There must be a kind of a mix between solar storage, wind, and biomass. Also, the PTX will be a booming sector over the next 10 to 20 years. So I think policies should be implemented, taking into consideration this the contribution of its renewable energy sources in the mix.
Yes, definitely. And again, that's a challenge that is not singular to the Western Balkans, but it is a challenge made more difficult because of the delay, delay in reforms, and the delay also in investments, the delay in investments which would support a rapid deployment of more renewable energy. We see, on the other hand, that there is a great potential by the Western Balkans, first of all, for greening their own electricity generation mix, but also for exporting to some extent. And this potential is being tapped in some countries faster than in others. It all requires a reliable and investment-friendly legal framework. That's what we're working with each and every country in the context of the energy community. It also requires to minimize the cost impact of investment in renewables. That means smart support schemes, not the old type feed-in tariffs, which are being phased out all over Europe and also in the Western Balkans. To have such smart support schemes and also viable balancing solutions for renewables. You need the technology on the one hand, but you also need the markets to which you can link them to. So we are also working with the countries to establish liquid and regionally integrated power markets. And of course, what you mentioned, Kostas, is an important factor as well. The flexibility of the system must be guaranteed as well. We have no lack of infrastructure, especially cross-border infrastructure in the Western Balkans. There may need to be more investment in distribution infrastructure because they are not necessarily fit for the transition in terms of changing the flow of electricity. In particular, also if we look into decentralized renewable power. And all that needs bringing together a number of factors, a number of support factors, which require more thorough reforms on the one hand, but also the willingness of investors to come and take the opportunities that are being offered in the Balkans. In this respect, I think it's also important to mention that the large utilities which are dominating the market in all the 6 contracting parties can and should do more by diversifying their own portfolio towards intermittent renewables.
So exactly this, I think you mentioned also the infrastructure, which is, from my point of view, especially in my country, this is the main obstacle that hinders the development of green energy projects. I think the infrastructure, the grid, is the main hurdle in Greece, at least, in order to develop more energy projects. So, and I think this will be the case also in the Balkans, because soon, I think investors are coming in the Western Balkans. Most of the challenges now are the land and land issues in the area, at least from my point of view, what I see in the Western Balkans. Am I right on that?
Yes, but at the same time, less so still as in other European countries, because also of has to do with the underdevelopment of the sector, and I see additional challenges but also benefits to be made in the elements that you mentioned. We have to increase the flexibility of the system. And if I can start at the top level, so of the transmission infrastructure, full integration of the power markets and also the power systems with the European one can have great benefits, evidently, for flexibility, for balancing. This is, and not only for the Western Balkans, but also for countries like Greece. This is under preparation, but it definitely would require a more adequate and using the full potential of the available interconnected capacity in actually allocating that capacity. So there's still a lot to be done. And then, of course, we need to zoom in to the national systems as well, where I think the distribution system is key. Also, additional flexibility measures, storage and others, which in the end will again take us back to one of the key issues not yet addressed and very difficult to address now under the conditions of crisis in many Western Balkan countries, and that's the lack of cost-reflective prices and tariffs, because investments in these in infrastructure, investments in additional flexibility, etc., will have to be reflected, at least to some extent, in the grid tariffs and the electricity prices. And there, I think we will see at least after the most imminent price surge will be over, that we will have to discuss a new focus on how prices can actually incentivize investment, the necessary investment, and as I also said before, on how this all can be included in a good and reliable planning instrument, such as the National Energy and Climate Plans.
I think also energy communities can play a significant role in this transition because they are offering decentralized source of energy. So, and I can give you an example also from my country in Greece, where over the last couple of years, we had more than 1 gigawatt of energy communities. So the local communities can produce their electricity. This will be decentralized, I mean, dispersed all around the country. So I believe that also for the Western Balkans, this can be a first step to move forward in the energy transition. And a stable legal framework, which will accelerate and will provide the investors with the security to invest in the Balkans.
I couldn't agree more with you, Kostas, on that. The stable legal framework is something indeed that we try to take as part of our work together with the countries, and we do see improvements there. There is a great focus, of course, of large-scale renewables projects, and they are very valuable and valid. And they will also provide opportunities for investments on the market, a pan-European market, which may elsewhere be already quite saturated or difficult to pursue, given a lot of permitting, public resistance in other European economies and jurisdictions. But that should not prevent us, and unfortunately there's still some lagging behind, to roll out mechanisms that facilitate the decentralizing of energy production. So rooftop solar, energy communities, that's a very nascent organizations, nascent concepts. Even technology, despite widely available, is not yet has not yet to large amounts found its way to customers, which could be turned into prosumers. So that's definitely something where the Western Balkan countries could and should catch up. And again, it's all interlinked, so it also requires the right price signals to be set, and that's where, of course, this energy price crisis is now. It's on the one hand showing us how scarce and how also valuable electricity has become, but it's on the other hand politically very sensitive now to put a focus and put measures in place to ensure that prices are at least reflecting the costs of electricity produced.
So that I think that the war in Ukraine can offer a tremendous opportunity for Europe to focus now on the renewable energy resources. So the renewable energy can be the answer to the increasing gas prices. And I also believe that green hydrogen will play a key role in substituting the uses of natural gas in many applications, in many industries. So we need, I think, more solar and wind in order to install electrolyzers and produce green hydrogen. I think it's a trend we will see it over the next 5 years increasingly in the region, because the Balkans can become a hub between East and West. It's the connection point between East and West.
Yes, what you are describing is essentially a breaking down of the European Union's Repower EU strategy to the Western Balkans. If we come back for a moment to the war in Ukraine, something that is affecting our work a lot, as Ukraine is also a contracting party of the energy community. We see how this has not only and evidently and tragically affected the energy system in Ukraine, but that in rethinking the energy systems in countries affected directly or indirectly by the war, that not only a replicating of what Europe is doing, but maybe a leapfrogging would be possible. For this, I think in the Western Balkans, still a lot of elements need to be changed to understand, and they are affected by the war in Ukraine as every country in Europe as well. They are not so much depending on gas as a price setter for electricity, most of them, but they have imported the high prices determined by the price of gas and the scarcity of gas in Europe. So the effect is clearly there. It's while Ukraine, for instance, is struggling for survival now and they're fighting bravely against the Russian aggressors, also in keeping the energy system afloat and functioning. The Western Balkans still have to see that after this war and after the energy price crisis, partly caused by the war, nothing will be as before. So I think I could fully subscribe to what you were saying. It needs the spirit to see this as a chance to not just add to the existing components, to the existing energy mix, a few rather decorative elements of more renewables, more hydrogen, more other more flexibility measures, but to rethink the systems as well. We have, and again, I'm mentioning the national energy and climate plans. They provide a good instrument for doing that. Some contracting parties are already adopting strategies that would really also, to come back to one of our previous discussion points, would also include a farewell to coal and a swift transition to decarbonized or lower carbonized fuels. But that I think is something that we need to develop now, the spirit of designing the energy system differently from how it is done today. We have the ingredients there, but probably the real work will start once there is some relaxation on the multiple crises hitting the Balkans, and where they perceive themselves not only as operating in emergency mode, but have the capacity, also the human capacity, of course, to take all elements already available, new elements, and also the investment being offered into account in redesigning their systems.
So, moving to the next question, what is attractive about the Greek energy market and what are the challenges here? So, as explained earlier, Greece can serve as a hub between East and West, and that's why also we are upgrading our interconnections with between Greece and the Balkans. And over the last 10 years, over the last 4 years, there was a firm will of the government to move towards the decarbonization, the phase out of the coal-fired thermal plants. This has brought many investors in the country, along with the high irradiation and very good yields on the solar parks. That's why you can we have roughly 100 gigawatts of solar applications over the last 3 years, out of which only 20 gigawatts will become reality, and this due to grid constraints. So the biggest challenge in the market is the grid capacity, where we don't have enough grid capacity, and the land issues, because we had we were in a transition phase from the land registry to the cadastre. So this is a major challenge, and considering that the land in Greece are small pieces, there are no big plots in Greece.
Yes, I think Greece is and can set a very good example and share lessons learned in the transition also with the Western Balkans. You know, our energy community is also often referred to as the Athens community, because we were founded in Athens, with already this bridging element that you mentioned in mind. And I think it's more than a bridge. It is really a region which has a huge potential, which has maybe sometimes similar challenges as in Greece. We see a lot of cooperation between Greek operators and the Western Balkans. For instance, when it comes to energy markets in general, also the setup and the design of energy markets, the participation and future coupling of power exchanges, etc. I see that Greece and Greek companies play a leading role, and definitely this is something to be developed further. I see there's questions in the chat. Kostas, would you like to take them up? Should I?
I can give an answer for my country. For example, the target for 2030 in my country is to have 70% of the production from renewable energy sources, which likely will be 80% considering the revised targets. We are revising the targets every year. The energy mix is in favor of solar, at least in Greece, and over the last year we have changes in we are developing the legal framework for the storage. I think solar storage and wind can play a significant role along with the offshore wind in Greece. But the next challenge, I believe, not only for Greece, but for Balkans, is the green hydrogen, because there will be plenty of solar projects to produce electricity that can be converted in hydrogen. Greece, for this reason, is working on a legal framework. And I think over the next couple of months, we will have a legal framework for hydrogen. I'm not quite sure what's the case in the Balkans for the green hydrogen.
Yes, I can confirm what you've been saying. As I said before, the targets for renewables will be set on 15th of December per each country in the Western Balkans. Altogether, they amount to over 31% as being proposed. This will mostly, clearly we have a focus on greening the electricity sector. I think this will indeed, given the reliance on coal, will be a big challenge. So I'm maybe a little bit less optimistic than you for the immediate role that green hydrogen can play, but definitely that's something where also the Western Balkans shouldn't lose touch with the development in other European countries. As to the question, hydropower or intermittent renewables, hydropower has definitely its advantages. On the other hand, we know that when it comes to large hydropower, there's a lot of nature protection and protected areas which need to be and should be exempted. Small hydropowers, which is something quite controversial in the Western Balkans, is not necessarily yielding the result needed to contribute to an energy transition. In the end, I believe in terms of hydropower, so clearly intermittent solar and wind are the future also for the Western Balkans. When it comes to hydropower, probably rehabilitation should play a central and key role. There is a question to energy crisis versus energy transition. Maybe if I can go first. This was precisely the connex made in the Berlin Declaration that I mentioned. Please feel free to also find that declaration on the web. I think it has a lot of very interesting features determining the future of the energy transition in this crisis situation for the Western Balkans. All the leaders of the Western Balkans were present in Berlin, and such a declaration was adopted, which should provide answers to how can transition not only continue but go much faster in times of energy crisis. And there, I think the key focus of that declaration and of that commitment is on greater regional cooperation, because one of the features of the Western Balkans is that their respective markets are too small to allow for transition by themselves. They do need regional coordination, cooperation, which goes way beyond the features and the mechanisms that are being applied currently. So if we zoom out from individual countries' challenges in the energy transition and look at the region, their complementarity, their good interconnectors, and their joint capacity together with the European Union countries such as Greece to maximize their security and make welfare gains, for instance, by initiatives like market coupling, etc., will provide answers to that juxtaposition. Good.
So, I think we are done for today. I would like to thank also everybody for joining, and hope to see you in the Balkan Energy Summit very soon.
Thanks a lot, Kostas. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Okay.
Goodbye.
Good night.